What, in your opinion, is the most important thing about running the ideal classroom?
Most important thing is that you are meeting the needs of your students, and that isn't always what they want, but you're meeting the needs of the curriculum that they need in order to progress to the next level. So it's a mix of engagement, but also pushing so that they keep having to achieve the next level of whatever the attainment might be, whether it be, for me, reading or writing or being more critical in terms of the way they write or the way they read.
Okay, that's a big question. Definitely it's something that has lots of different answers. So clearly it depends on the teacher and the students involved and the kind of learning that you want to happen in that classroom. But in terms of some general kind of things, I guess what I see as fundamental, most important, is the teacher developing a relationship with the students and understanding their needs and being able to be responsive to those, and the other way around, the students feeling free to let the teacher know how things are going, and that sort of two-way feedback is really important. So in terms of when the teaching and learning is happening, again, there's no one size fits all, but what I think works very well is if classes have different environments that they work in depending on what they're learning. So for me as a science teacher, I sometimes move between open area classrooms where people can move around and work in groups, work in different lab situations. I like to also go outside as a biology teacher and use the nature and the outdoors. And sometimes things like our demonstration lab, it's a bit more like a lecture hall, are important if that's the kind of learning that's happening on that day. So flexible environments where the place you're working in works with the type of learning that's happening. And that then also translates to how people work, sometimes quietly working, sometimes noisily. So it's really about that flexibility to adapt to the type of learning and also the needs of the students.
I think the best and most important thing about running a classroom is to be inclusive, so everybody feels that they are included in all of the discussions, all of the activities, but not just included, also valued.
What's the best way a classroom should be set out?
Depends on the age group and it depends on the activity. Groups work fine if you're having discussion and you need to have that small group interaction. There are some things where you actually need to have the whole classroom involved, and so it's more about having students sitting in such a way that they don't tend to get lost in the big picture and they start talking amongst themselves rather than listening to everybody. And there are times when I think you actually need to be separated so that you're getting individual work, and students have to learn to rely on themselves because not everything can be done in groups.
Moving through some different modes, so it's whatever works best for the type of learning that you need to do. My base setup for the classroom would be around groups of students working in table groups inward facing. I tend to do not very much out the front teaching, and so I find the table groups are good for students to interact with each other, which is an important part of that peer learning. It also means I can walk around easily and move between groups and see what they're doing. But at times we have class discussions as well, and we set up a class circle and work in that way. And in other ways, it's important to foster some time for some silent individual work as well. But a lot of the time in my classroom would be around group and individual work at your own pace, with me coming around to assist.
Well, I'm all about collaborative learning. So I like the tables to be set up in small groups of like 3, maybe 4 students, depending on how many students are in the class. This just allows students to work together on activities and they can learn from each other because they bring their own skills and experiences to the classroom, and what's better than that?
What do you think the noise level in a classroom should be?
I like a relatively quiet classroom. It doesn't have to be silent. I think sometimes silent is too quiet. Depends on what you're doing. If you're doing some quiet reading and you're in a comfy environment and everyone's engaged in their novel, then quiet, silent is good. For work, I like work noise, but I don't like when it builds into social interaction, and it's so easy once you've let talking happen for students to get off track. I know I get off track myself, so I know how easy it is. So for me, it's not rowdy or rattly, so it has to be in a controlled, respectful environment to what's happening in the work frame.
This is always an interesting one. I tend to favour a slightly noisier classroom. I definitely think there's room for lots of discussion in the class. Most of that obviously has to be on task and directed towards what you're doing. I think when we are interacting with each other, we learn best. So passively receiving information as a silent viewer of that is one way to learn. But actually when you're interacting with others and talking to them, you can go back and forth and get a lot more done. Obviously, if I'm giving instructions or if we're having a class discussion, I like one person to be speaking at a time. So in those situations, it's really important to respect the speaker, whether that's a student or a teacher, within those contexts. But in general learning time, I like to have students discussing ideas with each other. And I was talking to someone before, actually, one of the most useful things for me as a teacher to understand where students are in their learning is for me to listen in on their conversations about the learning. So if I listen to two students talking about a problem or a topic that they're investigating or struggling with, I can quickly sort of pick up where they are. Sometimes just leave them to it and listen to how they interact, and sometimes I can intervene and help to dispel some misconceptions or question them further to go a little bit deeper in their thinking.
I think at times it should be silent, I think at times it should be loud, I think at times it should be in between. I think it depends on what we're doing and what the subject is.
And lastly, how do you think a student-teacher relationship should work?
It's got to have respect in it. The students have to understand that the teacher has a level of knowledge that they need to impart that they don't have. And so there is, they have to respect the teacher to teach them and to move them on. Teachers have to respect that students need to learn and to treat them politely and answer their question. No such thing as a foolish question. Everybody should be treated as an individual, progressing at their own rate. But the teacher is also responsible for teaching students about interpersonal behaviour and interpersonal relationships within that classroom as well. So I'd say respect, but there are different levels of respect that need to be given.
In terms of the relationships between teachers and students, I think the open and transparent sort of relationship is really important. You want students to feel free to provide feedback that's positive and negative. So if students aren't getting what they need to move their learning forward, I want there to be enough trust for them to be able to let me know that. Sometimes that can happen verbally, but if students don't feel comfortable for that, providing some feedback, surveys and things like that gives students an opportunity to do that. I think obviously respect is a major part of that. I don't think it's necessary or even positive to be overly friendly with students. I think you want to be, professional and positive and courteous in your relationships. But I still think that there is a difference between teachers and students, and can't be buddies. You're really there to understand the learning, and as the expert in learning, help students with that and drive them forward. And sometimes the learning can happen best under conditions where students are being stretched out of their comfort zone, and sometimes obviously pushing students needs to happen. And as long as there is respect and students understand why you're giving them that nudge, then I think it can be a very positive thing. So if you've got good respect, relationships and trust, it allows you to drive that learning forward a little bit harder.
I think that there should be respect on both levels. I think students should respect their teachers, but the teachers also need to respect the students. You can't expect someone to respect you when you have no respect. I think teachers really should always be approachable at all times and trusting, very trusting.